thanks for all coming out. It's freezing out. I know it is, and it's amazing that you all are out, and the dinner was fabulous. I just want to give a nice hand to all the women that gave us this great dinner. It was so good, and I just love it, and it was a real treat not to even have to cook. But for those of you who don't know, you obviously know now, my name is Dee Oliver, and I just want to talk to you about some things I've learned over the last 27 years or so. And one of the things I wanted to let you know is that marriage is probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, besides my 3 beautiful girls and Botox, because I think that's right up there with the top 3, don't you think? But really, my married life is probably a little more different than you all, because I was married to a funeral director, and so that kind of changes things a little bit when you live with a man like that. And to start off with, he met me in the cemetery. It was my grandmother's funeral, and he saw me, and he checked out the crowd to see if we knew any people that were common to each other, and he did. And so that's where he first saw me. From then, we had a couple of blind dates. After that, we had our first official date. And he called, and I said, I'd love to go out with you. And with that, we were destined for the Steak and Ale on Military Highway, a big 5-star restaurant we were headed to. And I had a new outfit. My mother had actually bought me 3, so I could choose from. And he came and picked me up in this big black sports car. And it was a sports car, but it was black. I soon to learn everything we own later becomes black. I just want you to know, I put color on for y'all tonight. This is about as colorful as I get. And after that, he picked me up, and he was so handsome. He had a blue blazer on and khaki pants. He was dressed to the nines, and he slides in that sports car, and he says to me, we're going to Steak and Ale, and that was a big deal. And he said, but I couldn't get off call. Now remember, I lived at the beach. I grew up with trucks and surfers and tan and sun spray in my hair trying to make me blonde and things. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he said, but it'll be fine, don't worry about it. I said, okay, so off we go. Well, no sooner, we really were probably about 2 miles into this date, and this pager goes off. And he goes, I really want to go out with you. He said, do you mind just if I can go ahead and take care of this? I said, no, go right ahead, it's no problem. So off we go to the funeral home. I'm thinking, this is interesting. And so we pull up to the funeral home, and he gets out. He said, I'll be right back, just sit tight. And I said, fine. And I sit there, and he runs in, he comes back out. Now he's changed clothes. He's in a black pinstripe suit. And he goes, just be right there, we're gonna switch cars. I said, really? I said, all right, I'm thinking, I'm game, he's cute, right? So the next thing, he backs out this black station wagon. He said, just get in the front. I said, okay. I'm still thinking he's cute. We drive down the road, right? And next thing I know, we're in some neighborhood. He goes, I'll be right back. I noticed there are 2 other men in the yard dressed exactly like him. At that time, I had gone to Norfolk Catholic, which they teach you to smoke at Norfolk Catholic, so I light up a cigarette, because I'm thinking, we didn't have cell phones, so you couldn't, check your Facebook out, so I'm smoking. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay. He comes out, he's talking to the men, everybody disappears for a second, I'm not paying attention, next thing I know, boom, 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 boom. I said, what the heck was that, right? All of a sudden I turned, now the station wagon is what's called a removal wagon. We didn't have vans back then, okay? And it's just a black station wagon with curtains in it. All of a sudden, right here next to me is this person under a white sheet. He just slides right in next to me, looking cute. And I said, okay. He goes, this is Mrs. Smith. I said, is she going to dinner with us? Right then, I thought, I'm still going to eat with him. He's really cute. This might be Mr. Number 1 for me. Because I thought if I was willing to go to dinner with Mrs. Smith and him, I must really like him. So after that, soon we got married, and I actually moved into the funeral home, which was that's a whole nother story. And I quickly immersed myself into learning how about caskets and writing an obituary and vaults and cemeteries and headstones. This is nothing like surfing at all. I was just shocked. I was like, oh my gosh. And from there we had 3 children, and my 3 children learned things like how to jump rope with pew ropes and the housekeeper there, and playing hide and seek with the funeral directors. And hiding, they actually hid in the caskets. And from there, they learned to ride bikes in the cemetery. And I'm sure none of you have ever told your children when they're learning to drive a car, do not hit a headstone. Do not hit a headstone. Because literally, that's what we did. And 27 years I spent my life doing this, and it really was the best 27 years of my life. And I basically can tell you, or thought, I was an expert on death. Johnny Oliver really was an expert at death, but I was pretty close behind him. And about May the 2nd, 2007, he had an aneurysm in bed with me. And 2 days later, I disconnected him from life support. And that was the first day I realized that as much as an expert I was on death, I didn't know everything. I was in for some surprises. And so really what I want to sort of kind of teach you all is not to be too surprised. Death is surprising on its own, but you can do a few things in your life to kind of keep yourself from falling down too hard. So shortly right after Johnny had died, I was standing in the yard and the big black UPS truck pulls in, and the UPS guy comes out. You know how good looking they are. Even in my grief, I was thinking, he's hot. Oh, he's hot. And he comes up and he puts his arms around me. He says, oh my gosh, he goes, I've heard about this. My wife and I are just praying for you. And he goes, really? He goes, we talk about this. We're just so undone by it. And we just want to know, what is it that we can do for you? I said, well, you could hold me a little longer. That would help. But other than that. And he said, what is it if you ever had to tell somebody, what is it that you would tell them? And I said to him, I forgot to pull these out. I said, you know those keys on your key ring? He said, yeah. I said, can you tell us what they go to? Tell your wife. Because we have a bunch of keys that are in the console of my husband's funeral car that go to something. So we know that somewhere somebody is locked out of something. And I bet most of you here don't have a clue what the keys on your husband's key rings are. And as crazy as that sounds, when you are in the middle of trying to deal with all this, something as silly as the extra spare set of car keys, the keys that are on his key ring, I do know there's a Coke machine key ring on this. I think that's it. Will just completely undo your whole day. You know, and so something like that is what makes things, kind of makes your world rock a little bit. Which leads me to the next thing I learned, pink job, blue jobs. I don't know if any of you all know about these, but they are something else. And pink job, blue jobs, well, let me ask you this. How many of you know the difference between a widow and a widower? With the exception of the fact that I'm a female and they're a male. Pink job, blue jobs. These are the things that he knows and you know. Like, I didn't know anything about roof repairs, the rotten window that he was working on. What else was there? How to have a house painted. Who do you call? The furnace starts to go. Where's that? And the mulch. I thought the mulch just came twice a year. I didn't know you actually had to go select it. There was someone you had to call. You had to know how much yard. The mulch sold in yards. And that's not like, and you don't just say, like, I have one. I just need 1 yard filled. There's 2. I ended up I think I have 14 yards. And then on his half, does he know who the pediatrician is? Where your dry cleaning goes? How about the washer and dryer? How does that work? The dishwasher. Johnny did know the dishwasher. The vacuum cleaner. If you have a housekeeper, does he know about her? And if she shows up, does he know what she cost? See, those are the things. Like, Johnny was in the midst of redoing the furnace and the heating, and he was trying to talk to me about it, to be honest with you, and I really dismissed it. It was a blue job, I wasn't interested in it. I was more interested in my pink world. And sure enough, he dies. And sure enough, the entire heating and air conditioning system has to be replaced. And I don't have a clue how to do this, nor who to call. And I'm scrambling through his desk trying to find any piece of paper that might possibly have some sort of information on it. And I finally figured it out. I lost a lot of sleepless nights and hand-wringing and called people and had men come over and talk to you, and I got it done. But that's one of the many things. The other thing that I found out was one time I was in the kitchen, and Avon and I are in the kitchen, right? This would be a blue job. And I have just finished cleaning the house, and I look over at the kitchen rug, and I go, what the heck is that? And I walk over, and I go to reach down and get it, and it's a snake. Not just a snake, it's a snake. And I step back, and I told Avon, I said, Avon, honey, get on the island. She goes, I said, just get on the island, I don't know. And I said, well, I had a cell phone and a house phone in my hand, and I'm thinking, now who do you call for something like this? And I'm looking at it, and it's looking at me, and the dogs are standing here, and about that time I said, don't move, child. Whatever you do, don't move, and keep your eye on that snake right there. And I went running out the door and to look for a man, any man, with anything. And I'm standing on my front porch like this, and all of a sudden, there's a yard man across the street. Well, I go running after him like he's the only man left in the United States. I grab hold of him. I said, get a shovel. Come with me. He probably thought I'd murdered my husband. And I said, no, come, hurry. And he's running in the front door. He goes, wait, I got to take my boots off. I said, no, it's fine. He gets in there. He goes, what are we doing? I said, you're killing that. He goes, oh, my Lord, you got a snake. Yeah, I got a snake. I thought to myself, now really, if Eve had been smart, and she'd have gone and gotten Adam out of the garden with a shovel and killed that serpent, and we wouldn't have had any of these problems if she'd done that right off the bat. I am telling you. So that leads me right into what I wish we had done. And then all of this sort of led up to the point where I thought, I wish we had been a little bit smarter. And really, we know a lot about death. I mean, we live and breathe it constantly. And somewhere along the line, I remember watching like a TV or a movie, and where the guy pulls out a letter and it says, only to be opened upon my death, and it's either a murder mystery. I can't really remember it, and maybe it's got some sort of detail about a murder or an affair, illegitimate children or something. And I thought, now that's a good idea. I said, we should have done a letter to each other. And I said, in that letter, we would have put all the important things in it that we really needed to know. And I got to thinking what Johnny would have written to me. And I thought it would probably go like this. My dearest, delightful, darling Dee, you have been the most important person in my life. You are the most beautiful, gracious, intelligent, fabulous woman I have ever met. Being with you has made my life worth living. Yeah, right. But this is what it would have been. Something like this. And so I figured, really, if we had done this, and I want y'all to go do this, because we didn't, it would have said, hey, Dee, here's a list of all the things you've nagged at me about every single day. I didn't have time to mess with any of it, so I made one of the funeral directors at work do it for me, which is true. This is what he did. Hope this is everything. I love you, Johnny. And in this letter would contain banks we do business with, account numbers, infos about safety deposit boxes and the location of the keys, info on stocks, bonds, or other investments, as well as contact numbers for brokers or managers, location of important documents such as military discharge papers, birth, marriage, divorce certificates, social security cards, passports, car titles, insurance policies, the deed to the house, tax returns, business agreements, info and any business or real estate concerns which I might not be aware of, how to access Social Security benefits, although the funeral home will do this for you, wills, names and numbers of accountants, lawyers, and insurance agents. And if he really went the extra mile for me, He would have listed people to notify out of town, names and numbers of plumbers, mechanics, the cell phone carrier, the yard guy, the mulch man, and of course, if they had made funeral plans, the funeral home, cemetery, obit, hymns, scriptures, clothes. Yes, clothes. You should really think about what you should be buried in. This is an important thing in life. Johnny would tell me weekly, I think, what he wanted to be buried in. It was very important to him because he didn't want to go in that funeral suit because he wore it all the time. So it was one night it was the gray sports car, another sports coat, another night it's the camel hair sports coat, navy pants, this shoes, that shoes. I mean, literally, when he died, we had like 4 outfits. We couldn't decide. It was like dressing Ken. It's like, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to put him? But I will tell you something really funny. Is and truly, every time I tried to explain to him what I wanted, he just really wasn't interested in what I was going to wear. So it's a good thing I didn't go first. But I will tell you a funny story about funeral clothes, and this is kind of why it's important to at least get something going. And this happened in my own funeral, and my own family. I had a cousin who passed away not too long ago, and his clothes were brought in for him. And there was a lot of controversy, and a lot of trauma, and, which is not uncommon, unfortunately, and even in our own families. And my dad was there, and his sister was there, and I said to his daughter, who was making the arrangements, you bring clothes for him? Oh, yes, they're in the back. I'd given them to the men. I said, okay, great. I said, well, we're going to get him dressed so you all can view him, and then we'll be set. She says, fine. So I go back to the back office, and there's 3 outfits. I said, all right, here we go. So I went back out, and I said, which one? You want the polo shirt? You want the pullover sweater? Or do you want the suit? What are we dressing him in? She says, I don't care. I went back in there, the men said, no, that's not going to go. Go back there and ask one more time. I said, okay. So I went back. She said, really, anything you want to put him in is fine. So I told the guys, I said, pick an outfit. So knowing the men, they're going to put him in the suit. He looks so handsome. And so I went in, and he's in the viewing room and laid out and everything. And I said, okay, he's ready. And so my dad wheels back, because my dad's in a wheelchair. He's doing this, and his cousin's right behind him, and she's walking. And his daughter and the daughter's husband's with them. We go in the viewing room, and everybody has a little moment. And my dad's patting him on the hand, and his sister's, rubbing him on the shoulder, and his daughter walks up, and she goes, oh, he looks fabulous. About that time, his son-in-law walks up and goes, oh, wait, that's my suit. Kid you not. I said, oh, this isn't going to be good. I said, really? And he goes, yeah, I just bought that to go to his funeral. I said, his daughter's going, you got to get it off. You got to get it off. He's got to wear it. I went, well, he's not wearing that suit. That's what I've done. And so my uncle went to the hereafter in a brand new suit. And it was the poor son-in-law had to go buy something for the funeral. It was like one of the best things ever. I gotta tell you. We'll be laughing about that for 30 years. She was so mad. I said, well, you got to designate what you're going to wear, because this is what happens. So, but really, going back to the letter, last week I was at the office, and a friend of mine had passed away, and her husband was sitting there, and she had died unexpectedly, and she knew everything. And he was sitting there, and I said, John, do you have a will? I don't know. I said, well, do you have an idea where it might be? I don't know. She took care of all that. And I said, well, what about a safety deposit box? Do you have that? And he goes, I don't know. I guess I'm just going to have to start opening every drawer and start going through stuff. And he really, I mean, she took care of everything, and he really didn't know anything. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't even begin to help this man, because what he needs to know, she had that information. And so really, if you take the time as long as this is, and even if you don't even want to go this extra route and do all this, if you just sit down and tell your spouse or your significant other or your sister or your brother or whoever it is where all these things are. I said, you can even stick them in this and tape them in the back of a closet somewhere, and then at least tell another person besides just the two of you in case you all go together, because that won't do any good. Nobody will find that, will they, till they move. But it really will lessen the blow a lot if you can get your hands on this stuff, because you really have to have it. And so it's important to get that done. And the other thing you should really think about doing is writing an obituary. And the old joke is, I opened the paper today and I didn't see my name in it, so it's going to be a good day. Really, I know that people have a real thing about obituaries. It's sort of like wills. So if y'all haven't done a will, you need to do the will. But for some reason, somewhere along the line, superstition came about that if you wrote an obituary, you wrote a will, you were going to drop dead. Well, really, that's not going to happen, because we do ours. We write our obit in fun all the time, and we're still here. Maybe it's because it's a joke, but it's the important thing about writing an obituary is that really when you're doing funeral arrangements, that is the number one stressful thing to the family. They got to write something. It's going to be read by everybody. It's going to be published. Most people have never had anything published that the entire city reads. It's got to be correct, and it has a deadline. I mean, that thing has to be in right off the bat. And so you're sitting there in front of a stranger, and he's trying to ask you questions, and you can't remember anything. And truly, the thing you have to remember is if you don't do it yourself, somebody's going to do it. And that person's either going to be a friend, a spouse, a child, a complete stranger, which is going to be your funeral director. And nobody knows you other than you. And nobody remembers anything except for you. And I can remember writing Johnny's literally like it was yesterday. And I sat down, and we had a general manager, and we were ready to go. And we were like sitting there going, oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, what am I going to write about this person who I absolutely adore, who I think is probably the most important person in my entire world, and I got till 3 o'clock tomorrow to pull this off? And I can't remember anything about him. Now, if you ask me right now, I could tell you every single thing about John Oliver. At that moment, nothing. And not even the general manager, who had been with him longer than I had, could even remember. So we sort of muddled through this whole thing, got a photo, which really, to this day, I just don't like the photo. And I'm thinking, that's not so good. But really, and if you want to know how you do one of these, right here, Hampton Roads. You open it up every day, and as long as you don't see your name, you are good. Look, there's not many people died today, because I just opened this up. I said, this is a low day for us. Must be like leftover, like Super Bowl or something. I don't know. That's not good. There is no happy funeral directors today. I want to tell you that. But this is your template. Basically, this is how it works. Put your name, your date of birth, survivors, where you went to school, whatever you want to do. Now, remember, when you're doing this, you get to be famous. It's sort of like your claim to fame here. You don't want to put yourself up there too much, because then people will notice that you wrote a lot of stuff that's not true. And then, and you don't want to use it for airing dirty laundry either, like who you've been mad at for 30 years. You don't want to list her name in here, because that's not good either. And the photograph, you got to get something current, because if you put it in something that's not current, they're going to want to call, and they're not going to be saying, oh, we're just so sorry. They're going to want to know who that plastic surgeon was, because they're going to want to know how you managed to look that good. But, so I got thinking about it. I said, I wonder what my children would write about for me. And I thought to myself, I know exactly what they would write. So I'm going to read you my obituary if I didn't write it. This is what Jackie and Madison and David would write. And it would go like this. Deanna Chesley Branch Oliver. Isn't that a big old name, isn't it? Born July 5th, nothing. Because they would say right now, she would never tell us her age. Daughter of Jackie and Dion Branch, widow of Johnny Oliver. Now, they wouldn't write anybody's proper names out because they wouldn't know it, probably. Born in California. They have no clue what city I was born into. Went to Norfolk Catholic High School, and right now they would break out in laughter because for some reason they think that I went to Norfolk Catholic is hilarious. Graduated from some college, went back to college, got a mortuary degree. They won't know where I went. She worked for our dad in the family business, and when she wasn't there, she could be found at the gym, playing tennis, or attending a garden club meeting. She made us go to church. She loved God, our dad, and us very much. Her dogs followed her everywhere. She had a lot of cousins. Now, they think that's like the most distinctive thing about me. And about now, they would have gotten completely bored with it, decided it was complete. They would try to find a picture. They'd break out into an argument over it, and the funeral director would have to finish the whole thing. That's how my obit would go right now. And so if that's what you want, leave it. But really, if you really want to do something good for your children and your spouse or your significant other, really sit down and just sort of write it out. It doesn't even have to be in obituary form. It just, if you can put the body in it, and that's no pun intended, just so that they know where you went to school and where you were born and what your full name is, because they probably don't know that about you, or your parents' full name. The funeral director will do all the rest of it. And you can put it back in that envelope. What do we do with that famous envelope? Or you can actually give it to a funeral home and they'll start a file for you, and they're not going to charge you for that. They'll just get that going. But and so while we're on the subject of funeral homes, you probably should think about choosing a funeral home. And most people aren't, they know where they are, they ride by them, they go to a funeral here and there. The first time they ever go to a funeral is the first time they're ever in a funeral home, and they kind of get creeped out by the whole thing. And so my thought is on this, on funeral homes, is sort of like if you're getting married, and you make all these plans, and you buy a dress, and you spend a year picking it out in the church and the reception, you're having a baby, you're thinking about all of that, you're gonna die. You just can't get out of it. And I don't know why everybody waits until the moment it happens, they decide they gotta scramble. They got 48 hours or 72 hours to pull off a huge event, which is the size of a wedding, basically, and they don't have a clue what they're doing. And they're standing there looking at us going, well, I don't know. And I'm thinking, well, you drove by us for like 20 years. And if it wasn't us, it was the guy down the street. But really, funeral homes, all you got to do is Google them. I would have told you to pick out the yellow pages, but when I mentioned that, evidently nobody uses those anymore. And then you can't see the print because I realized the print's like this big now. But you Google funeral homes or ask your neighbor or a friend who they've used, who's got the best reputation. And I think that's a real important thing, because we spend our whole life making intelligent decisions about certain things. You think about where you want to go to college, what kind of career you want, where you want to buy your house, where you want to go to church, where your neighborhood's going to be. Then you start having children and you start planning for them, where they're going to go to preschool and high school and college. You plan for weddings and all things like that. And funerals they're expensive. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. They're important. They cause a lot of emotions. And it's just a real shame that I think that a lot of the stress comes in because people are just so unprepared for such a major event in their lives. And so when you go to pick a funeral home, the best way to do it is you decide on 2 or 3, and then from there you call up and you make an appointment. And funeral homes like that. They think that's a good thing because it gives them a chance to talk to you when everybody's feeling good. And so you go and you make an appointment, and the funeral director will meet you, and you can get a tour of the place. You can see the chapel, ask questions. Do they cremate? Do they have a cremator on location, or do they use somebody else? How many people does their chapel hold? Do they provide receptions? Some funeral homes actually do a reception. How many people are on staff? Do they have full-time people? Do they have part-time people? All of those things make a difference. If you're doing a wedding, you would be, all of you sitting here would be right on it if you were planning a wedding reception. You would be, all over that. And so that's why I want you to really think about that. The other thing I want you to think about is, are they family owned? And I'm not just talking about Oliver's, I'm talking about any funeral home. Funeral homes are funny because what's happened to them, and some people know and some people don't know, is that these big corporations have been starting to buy the mom and pop places. And they use the family name. And they'll keep the person on for like 3 or 4 years or something like that. But what happens is you have a corporation doing that, and they're not that, I probably shouldn't say, but they're really not that good. So what you want is a family-owned funeral home, regardless of who it is. Because they've been around for generations. They're tied to the communities, they're tied to the churches, they're tied to the local schools and charities and stuff like that, and they want to make sure that you're happy. And that's the other important thing. If you're not happy in a funeral home, you can leave. And I'm not talking about just when you're on the tour, so to speak. If mom's in the back and you're in the front, and you decide you just don't like that guy, you can leave. Now, you can't go get her and put her in your car because that's against the law, and it's a little hard anyway. But you can't tell them that you just think you might have changed your mind. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you can just say, can I go home for a little while? I'll be right back. And you can go down the street to another funeral home, and that funeral home will call the one you just left. They'll send a car for Mama, the right kind, that removal wagon that I had the date in. And they'll settle the bill for you. And you never even have to see that funeral home again. But you are not stuck anywhere, unless, of course, now, once you're like headed to the cemetery and you got a hearse and you got all these cars behind you, you're stuck. You can't change your mind then. That's stuck. But prior to that, you are not stuck at all. So you can actually keep on moving. And when you're in there, one of these good things is, when you go into a funeral home, is that you can see the selection room. And that selection room is the big thing. It's got all the caskets, and you walk in, and every time you open we got double doors, right? Open the door. My kids love that room. Open the door, and people go, whoa, whoa. But my kids, one day Madison, I'll tell you this story real quick. One day Madison, I was driving soccer carpool, and I had to stop and drop some paperwork off, and we got Coke machines, which is a big deal when you're like 8, that you own a Coke machine. And so she went in the secretary, and we had a little bit of the soccer team with us, and the secretary gave everybody a quarter or whatever it was. They all went in and got it, and the next thing I know, Johnny and I are standing in the garage, and we're talking, and he says, well, you got to get going, because I think I need dinner. And so I look around, and I don't have all these little 8-year-olds anymore. I'm thinking, they're not in the parking lot, and they're not in the garage with the guys, and I start walking through the building looking. Madison had them in one of the viewing rooms, showing them a casket with a man in it. I said, well, that's going to get us evicted out of supper club real fast. I said, way to go. Johnny goes, that's good. That's just going to ruin us, isn't it? I said, yeah. But when you go into a selection room, and I just want to sort of give you a little bit of an overview so you know what you're looking at. It's a room full of caskets, obviously. And on one wall is going to be the urns, for cremations, and you can get all kinds of stuff now. Blankets with the person's face on it. And on another wall are these little teeny concrete boxes. And they're vaults, and they're probably They're huge. They're big. They go in the ground. They go in the grave, and that's what protects the casket from the outside elements, and it also protects the cemetery ground level for lawnmowers and people walking, and keeps it from settling and things like that. And so there's a selection. Actually, I live next door. Tom Rowland, he's the guy that makes all the vaults out on Raby Road, and so that's kind of creepy, isn't it? That is kind of creepy. The two of us live next door to each other like that. All we need is the guy that makes the headstones on the other side. And but so you go in there, and that's a selection. I think there's probably 12 different kinds of vaults. And vaults are concrete boxes, and some are painted, some are lined with stainless steel, some of them are lined with copper, some are lined actually in bronze. The lid goes on, the casket goes inside them, the lid goes on it, and it's all sealed. The top of the vault actually has the person's name on it, their date of birth, the date of death on it. We had Johnny's engraved with laser with a John Deere tractor on it. It was really cool. It's a shame, but you can't see it. But we did it anyway. And then you'll see all the caskets. They're arranged usually by metals and woods. And at least most funeral homes have it done like that. And you'll go in, and the funeral director will tell you, so these are the minimum metal ones. And those are usually the most inexpensive, and then they'll go to just regular stainless steel. They come in and whatever you see there is more than that. There's probably, like Baskin Robbins had 31 flavors of ice cream. It's nothing. Caskets come in more colors than you can think of. And then there's a copper and a bronze casket. From there, the woods come in. Pecan and maple and cherry and birch and mahogany. You name it. And from there, you can get interiors, and they can be pleated and tufted, and you can have praying hands, you can have a flag, you can have a cross embroidered on it. The finials on the ends can be taken out, and you can have baskets of flowers or eagles, or you name it. We could give you a UVA casket, we can give you a tech casket, we can decoupage your entire scrapbook on that baby. You name it, it can be done. And if you can't see it, we can find it. I guarantee it. We can do it on the computer, we can do it by book. They can be ordered extra long. If you're 7 foot tall, if you're 800 pounds, we get them extra wide. And they can all be delivered in less than 24 hours, which is amazing when you think about it. But it's funny, when we used to go in there, and Johnny would come in, and he'd always stand there like this, very serious, and he'd tell them all about it. Because inside the casket, you'll notice there's a little lucite frame, and it's got the name of the casket and where it's manufactured. They're all made in America. And, some have a little secret drawer in them. You just pop it, and the drawer pops out, and you can put something in it. I don't know what you would use later, but I guess a flashlight maybe, in case you needed it. But you can put something in, and some of them lock. That's in case, well, you don't need to know that. But things don't work out right. No, but really, so in our selection room, on the far wall, all by itself by the double doors, was this beautiful presidential African mahogany casket, hand carved. I think Jacqueline Kennedy actually was buried in it. I don't even know that they even make it anymore. It's so expensive to make. And opened it up, it was beautiful, tufted cream, the perfect cream color. Everything about it was perfect, and it was a humdinger. It was the cream of the crop. And everybody would say, they'd walk over and they look at the price, they go, wow. And Johnny, they'd say, wow, that's really something. Johnny said, well, that one's mine. And they say, because that's the most expensive? And Johnny said, no, because when I brought it in, I hit the wall, I scraped the daylights out of the back of it, and I can't sell it. And he was buried in that because we couldn't sell it. And we never ordered another one at all. It was just, that was just something else. But what I could tell you something. We always have a rule in the funeral industry. We have this rule called the no change for a year rule. And we really try to tell our families, don't do anything for the first year. And because we, like everybody, we like old things. We like Botox, so we don't want to be but so old. But we like old slippers and old chairs. We like our old friends. We like books. We like things to be familiar and secure to us, and we enjoy that because it makes us feel safe and warm and fuzzy and stuff. So I don't like a lot of change. And when somebody dies close to you, that means we got change coming. And so I found that really my personal experience was that sort of God sort of gives you this sort of bubble wrap, like I like to call it God's bubble wrap. He sort of wraps you up in this for the first year. You get about 365 days of this. He sort of insulates you from the real world. You sort of walk around, people always go, look at her, doesn't she look nice? So you don't realize that you don't know anything. You're just so fogged over, you don't have a clue what's going on anymore. You're just breathing. And she says, and so God has this, and you really need to sort of use it to your utmost advantage, because it's gone. That second year, it's gone. It's like somebody just threw cold water on you, and you're like, whoa. And so we try to tell people just to kind of sit and enjoy God's peace and enjoy this bubble wrap for a time. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Don't make any sudden moves. But your friends always want you to do something, and I come to the conclusion that people want you to do something after somebody dies because they're scared of what just happened to you. So they're thinking, let's just get her out into the world. And so you really shouldn't be moving. You shouldn't be giving anything away. Don't redecorate. But your friends want you to move. They want you to get somewhere warmer. They want you to go somewhere colder. They want you to get a new hairdo, maybe some blue highlights, maybe fix your nose, maybe do something here, just all kinds of things you could do. And we just go, don't. Unless you have a financial reason that you really need to make a change, nothing's going to happen in that year. You just sit tight. Now, when Johnny died, I'm a professional. And I got that mortuary science degree, and I've been doing this for a long time. I knew all about this rule, and so I didn't do anything. I moved the living room furniture around a little bit, but I didn't take anything out. I just rearranged it because he wouldn't let me move any furniture because he thought he was the decorator. So I would have one up on him. I was like, he's gone. I'm moving this sofa over here now. And so I did that, and that was it. And then right before Johnny died, let me backtrack. We had this great dog, Johnny Spot, this big standard poodle. And Spot dies literally 2 months before Johnny does. Johnny dies. 3 months later, my mom drops dead. So we're sort of in sticker shock. We can't get enough of this bubble wrap wrapped around us, to be honest with you. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to go get a dog. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a dog for these girls. So I decide that I'm going to get my cousin from Norfolk. I call her up, and I head to Fredericksburg to this breeder, and I go up there, and there are only 2 standard poodles left, brothers. Now, I see the parents. The mother's 90 pounds. The father's 95 pounds. These brothers are 4 months old, and they're already about like this. And I go, I'll take that one. My cousin goes, are you sure? I went, I'll take that one. We put Henry, because I decided I'm going to name him, and we put Henry in the back of the Suburban. We stayed home, and Henry throws up. Then Henry throws up again. Then Henry throws up one more time. And I'm thinking, really, any sane woman would have flipped that car around right back to Fredericksburg and dropped Henry off and told her to keep the check. It was a mistake. I'm so sorry, but I thought, no, I'm gonna do this, because what's that old saying? Pride goeth before D's fall. And so I bring home Henry, and the children are so happy, and I'm just like this. I am the best mother. I just saved this whole grief-stricken people. Like Moses. Where's that sea go? And it didn't go well. About 3 weeks later, I walked in the kitchen, and all my beautiful Vermont maple kitchen chairs have been chewed on. I mean, not just chewed on. I mean, like today, like when I sit on them, I get like marks, like splinters on my back of my leg. Like I hate summer in my kitchen because of the chairs. I tried to sand them out, didn't work. And then the whole plaster wall was eaten. And then the worst part This is the funniest thing. Right before Johnny died, God did all these great things for me, but I just kept messing up. And so he decided, because he really was a decorator, he decided he's going to get some stuff reupholstered, so he does. I guess the living room chairs all reupholstered, and Johnny had a decorator on retainer. This is why we were in the mess we were in. We didn't have a lawyer, we had a decorator. So, because he used it for the funeral homes. So anyway, I walked in, and there's all this like white fluffy stuff all over the place. I said, what the heck is that? I picked it up. The dog had eaten one of the upholstered chairs. I was hysterical. Henry went to Norfolk immediately. The funeral home boys looked at me and said, you know the rule. No change for a year. I said, it's a puppy. He said, no change means no change at all. So I decided I should have used the money for therapy and not a dog. But, so, and then we're probably going to run out of time, but I've got so much to tell you all, and I was just trying to tell you a couple of things, but one of the things I want to tell you all about is, you ever seen the reality TV shows like Hoarders? You know, I love Hoarders, because it makes me feel like I'm really organized, because I'm not. And so when I watch somebody that's like stepping all over stuff and they're like touching the ceiling, I'm thinking, look how clean I am. You know, because she can't even like find her bed, and I can sleep in mine. So I like that show because it makes me feel good, and I have come to the conclusion that I am a level 1 hoarder. I don't know if you know what that is. A level 1 hoarder is the person that's house looks really good when you walk in, but if you open the closet, you're doomed. And if you ask me where something is, I have to get back to you. And it might be a couple of days before I come back to you on where it is, because it takes me a while to kind of sort of generally figure out where it is. Now, Johnny, on the other hand, was the cleanup, throw it away. We don't need it. If we didn't use it in 7 days, it's no good to us, man. And so I get that, but I saved all kinds of things. I saved, you know, the florist vases and the baby clothes that are dry rotting. Like, my child's really going to use any of that stuff. And, you know, old books and, oh my gosh, Christmas and Halloween and Easter ornaments. And I'm still buying that stuff. And I got a whole 3rd floor full of that junk. And so I'm thinking it's good. And Johnny, we used to look at that stuff. He would look at it like he hadn't seen a woman in 6 months. You know, like a guy that's been at sea. He'd look at my stuff. I go, no, we're not going to do it. We'll get it. I promise. I swear we're going to organize it. I swear. Well, let me tell you something. That man dropped dead. And I looked at that attic and those closets. I said, oh, Lord, what have I done to myself? I had buried myself in this hoarding one mess. All my friends think I'm neat and tidy, and they didn't have a clue. And so I just want to let you know, because I'm always afraid I'm going to be like homeless. Like I'm going to need this stuff for like a cart or something. And so I was trying to save it, because, you know, if you lose everything, you need those extra clothes. I don't need the vases, but I need the blankets. And so my poor cousin Larry, who keeps telling me he already has a wife, and could I please get a boyfriend so that he doesn't have to do everything for me. Every time I turn around, Larry, the wall is broken, or this is broken. He goes, oh my gosh, surely we can find somebody for you. But, so I don't think so. It's not looking good. But I just sort of want you to know, so now I'm up to the problem of, do I just sell my house with all the stuff and tell them it's a bonus that they get this, or do I just die and let my children deal with it? I'm thinking right now I'm just going to die, but, and I'm going to tell you all one more thing, which is kind of funny, is, Johnny, for years, we used to tease him all the time because he'd stand at funerals like this all the time. He'd either stand like this in his suit. He's so cute. He'd stand like this, or he'd stand like this. And every time somebody would walk, he'd say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. 1,000 times I heard, I'm so sorry. I just think, oh my gosh, for surely you can think of something else to say to these people, but I'm so sorry. They know. They don't think you're sorry. And he did. He said it all the time. And we would make fun of him all the time. And he did, and it really we didn't really get it until I was on the receiving end of "I'm so sorry," and then I understood what those words meant. You know, he was smart enough to realize that there's not a whole lot you can say to anybody in a situation but you are sorry, and you want them to, and you want to be able to do something for them. But I gotta tell you something funny. Was people started saying things to me, right? And it wasn't, "I'm so sorry." And it started right after Johnny died, actually. It was a real close friend of mine, and actually it was a coworker. And we're walking down the hall, and Johnny, I don't think Johnny's been dead, but like 4 hours or something, if that. We're walking down the hallway, and he looks at me, and I adore this person, really do. And he looks at me, he goes, "Hey, Dee." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You know, you used to worry about how Johnny was going to die all the time?" I looked at him, I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore now, do you?" I looked at him, I said, "You know, you said that out loud, and I heard that. Did you want me to hear that? Because I did." And he said, "Well, you don't." And I said, well, after that, it was hard to top that one, but they did. And I'm going to read you just a couple of things that people have said to me. He's in a better place. Like, he was miserable before. It's like, really? Because I was thinking, really? Oh, that's nice. Now, what are you going to do now? Will your husband's company survive? Do you have enough money? Will you have to get another job? Sell your house? Call us if you want to sell your house. Are you scared to sleep alone in that house? Are you afraid somebody's going to break in? I bet it's hard to sleep in the bed without him. It's good that the girls are so young. It's good that the girls are so old. Do you think this will affect the girls? Are you going to have to sell or give away any of Johnny's clothes? What are you going to do with all his things? It's good you're so young. It's good you're so old. You're still young enough to get married. Do you think you will marry again? You should marry right away. It's better to be widowed than divorced. I know someone you should date. Have you thought about having sex with someone? Are you worried about having sex with someone? Maybe you should just have sex. You must be overwhelmed. You look tired. You should seek counseling. I don't know how you're able to go to those events and functions all by yourself. I never could do that. I bet it's hard to go to church after you've had his funeral there. I bet it's nice not to hear him snore anymore. You should buy a new, and that went from dogs to TVs to shoes to dresses. Now you don't have to argue over anything. You get to make all the decisions yourself. Are you worried about being alone forever? How long do you think it'll take you to get over his death? Now, I've thought about these a lot. I've had a long time to think about these. And I don't think any of them were said meanly or anything like that. I think that I've come to the conclusion that people are basically afraid of death, and rightly so. We all are. Nobody wants to really die, although we want to get to heaven. We just don't particularly care to go through the door. But, and I think that if it happens, people want to know what you know. And so they ask questions to kind of see if they can get some answers that maybe you might not know. And being a funeral director and doing that, they're thinking, I really got the, encyclopedia on this baby. But, they're really, although I had some really good responses, I really never did. But I did come up with a few that I thought were the answers, and that was, true enough, I'll never have to worry about Johnny dying again. Everything will work itself out. I'm not in a hurry to sell our home, but if you see a sign in the yard, you know it's for sale. Yes, the bed is empty, but some combination of 2 dogs and 3 girls usually fill it on any given night. I have an alarm, I own a gun, and I know how to shoot it. Johnny's clothes are packed away. I'm not sure what I'll do with them. I go to church to pray and not think about his funeral. Will I marry again? Well, someone's got to ask me first. I was raised that it's bad manners to talk about money, politics, or sex. I go to events alone because I don't want to stay home by myself. And how long does it take to get over somebody you love? I just don't think you ever do. So I think really the best thing you can say to somebody that's lost somebody is that I'm just really sorry. And if there's anything I can do, let me know. and then you just listen to them. Because one of my favorite people used to say it 1,000 times, 1,000 times, over and over again. And so, and then you just listen. And so that's it. Has anybody got any questions?